Hey guys, I'm Marcus,
I'm Dana.
and we're here to talk a little bit more about our focus on simplicity, specifically around the concept of do no harm. So Dana, as you were preparing for this week's kind of teaching script, what stood out to you about this simple rule of doing no harm?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that there is nothing simple about this simple rule. It's very complex. It's simple in its idea, and it's simple to understand the idea of doing no harm. But when you really dig into it, there's so much to consider about the ways that we can possibly be doing harm without even realizing it or intending to, that it becomes very, very daunting very quickly.
I think a lot of times if we think about John Wesley's 3 simple rules, like we often just leave it at that surface level of what the 3 rules say. But the thing that stood out to me was one of the things that you pulled out, which is the first general rule as it appears in the Book of Discipline.
Yeah.
Like outlining all the different things of like what exactly they meant when they said do no harm. Some of those things include the taking of the name of God in vain, the profaning the day of the Lord, either by doing ordinary work therein or by selling and buying. Drunkenness, buying or selling spirituous liquors or drinking them unless in case of extreme necessity.
Which I like the
The extreme necessity is a really good
Yeah, like how to use it.
Slaveholding, buying or selling slaves. Fighting, quarreling, brawling, brother going to law with brother, returning evil for evil, or railing for railing. The using many words in buying or selling, which I love that one because it's just like if you have to say a ton to get it across, you're probably lying.
Yep.
How many people could we sit there and say, please do not use the many words in, in selling what you're telling me? You're doing me harm.
Every commercial?
I was going to think of some other things.
Yeah, I know what you were thinking.
The buying or selling of goods that have not paid the duty. The giving or taking things on usury, i.e. unlawful interest. Uncharitable or unprofitable conversation, particularly speaking evil of magistrates or of ministers. John Wesley would put in there that we're not allowed to talk bad about ministers.
Yeah. Which technically I want to say that, we're considered ministers.
Okay.
By some people, so don't talk bad about us.
We're not done. It still goes. Doing to others as we should not, they should do unto us.
Doing not unto others.
Yeah, doing to others as we would not, they should do unto us. That's some great Old English.
Yeah, say it as complicated as possible, and there you have it.
Yeah. Good rule of simplicity, John Wesley. And then doing what we know is not for the glory of God, such as the putting on of gold or in costly apparel.
Yeah, we had to talk about that earlier.
The taking such diversions as cannot be used in the name of the Lord Jesus. The singing those songs or reading those books which do not tend to the knowledge or love of God. Softness and needless self-indulgence. Treat yourself.
Don't treat
yourself. Laying up treasure upon earth, borrowing without a probability of paying, or taking up goods without a probability of paying them. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's an insane list of things. And so
that's a full-time job.
That is. Earlier, we had a whole conversation around the idea of not putting on costly apparel. And
what is costly?
What is costly, right. And like really kind of like wrestling with this concept of what is or is not within the parameters of good. And so, you kind of brought up in your talk that there's this tension of what are you buying that has value because like it's of good quality, it's going to last, it's made ethically, it's well sourced, versus buying something more inexpensive that either puts people at risk of producing it or is so cheap that it's going to end up being thrown away and becoming additional waste that we don't need. One of the parts of our challenge is simplifying your stuff, and one of the things that like Jen Hatmaker talks about is like simplifying the wardrobe. And my in-laws lived in Germany for a period of time during the Cold War, and one of the things that they talked about was like how minimalist like a German ensemble was, because they bought like a few items that were of quality, that were versatile, and then just wore those regularly. So like, even thinking about the concept of like, are the things that we buying versatile that we will use them frequently and regularly, versus are they things that just like sit around and are special use case scenarios? You think about like kitchen gadgets.
Oh yeah.
And just like there's a lot of like
so
one use kitchen gadgets. Or how many like individual like shirts do we have that we just wear like with a particular get up? I used to have
this
these
one outfit.
I used to have these Virginia Tech Converses
Yeah.
that I never wore except on Virginia Tech game days, because they were gaudy, they were uncomfortable, they just weren't a good shoe.
Great purchase.
Yeah, I know. $20 at Walmart, and they just sat around. They might still be in my closet. That might be something that I have to purge as part of this simplicity.
Well, I think too, something that we lose sight of, and we like that don't wear costly apparel, and yes, it's all the things that we've already named, but it's also, I think this gets to kind of that idea of affluence, and wanting to make sure that we appear the right way to other people. And so if you're buying this thing that costs just this ridiculous amount of money simply because it's a certain brand, or people will think better of you because you've got this kind of thing, then that's what the problem is. Not necessarily how much it costs, as much as what it represents to you. Is that defining part of who you are, rather than your faith or other things, like making that and your appearance and your reputation the defining thing of who you are.
Yeah. Well, and even now, like there's this weird shift that's happened around like streetwear, and I think of like the brand Supreme that will sell like very basic things, but you slap a Supreme label on it, and all of a sudden it's like 80 times more expensive than it should ever be.
Yeah.
Like I was reading an article about like a brick that had Supreme on it that got purchased, and it was like hundreds of dollars for a singular brick.
That's just ridiculous.
Or like the Supreme crowbar, or like these Kanye West like white T-shirts that are like $200 a T-shirt. And it's a weird thing where it's like it's a status symbol that doesn't look like much.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a weird temptation with that right now, kind of in our culture for how that kind of plays out. So what's one thing that challenged you this week that you're kind of thinking of as you go into this next week, focusing on simplicity?
So this week, going into Sunday, so the challenge of waste, and that's one that I knew even before we were really thinking about simplicity, and it was something that I had kind of been convicted of. But I was reading an article about how plastic is not, that we were kind of sold a lie by the plastic industry, and that it's not really recyclable the way that we thought it was recyclable. And I started thinking about all of the things that I have or use that are plastic, thinking, well, I can recycle it when I'm done with it. And that's not really the case. And so this week I've been really trying to think about that. Like Brian and I will, we try and support local restaurants and help them through this. That's something that we've done through the whole quarantine. And so normally we would do takeout. And I started thinking about it, and I didn't feel like I could do it because I'm trying to reduce my single-use packaging and things that aren't recyclable. And so many
There's
of these,
so much of that in like takeout industry.
yes, and and styrofoam, and so it's not even like a plastic shell that may or may not be recyclable, but it's styrofoam that I definitely can't recycle. And so instead of ordering out, we did go to one restaurant and sit outside, because then I knew we could use we would be served on plates and cups and things that would be washed and reused again, and it would cut down on that. And that's not something that I've ever really spent a lot of time thinking about before, but another night we did do takeout, but it was pizza. And I knew that even if I couldn't recycle the cardboard, it's still going to break down and it's not going to be
Compostable.
around. Yes.
Yeah.
So it changed the way that we even ate this week. And so that has been really forefront in my mind. And then going into to the next challenge of spending, that one's going to be interesting. Brian and I are going to have to sit down and talk about how we're going to look at ways we're spending. But one of them might be not going and supporting the local businesses as much, and using that money in another way. So
yeah, when I think of the waste, we've gone through like seasons of doing that well. So when my kids were even younger, like we did the cloth diapering thing.
You're a better person than I am.
It didn't last.
Oh, okay.
So eventually convenience won out.
Yeah.
But we did cloth diapering for probably 2 of the now 4 years that we've been going on diapers and stuff. But like now we're not. So it's a consideration of like, what can we do better? And the other thing is composting. So like we have a compost bin and like we have 3 raised beds and we do gardening, but we go through seasons where we're doing better of like making sure that we're collecting the food scraps and putting them in the compost bin and actually using it versus just throwing them away. And so just kind of being mindful of that, especially as we're kind of doing some like end of fall planting things or doing some stuff in the yard that would be helpful with like compost and stuff. Just kind of being more mindful of that as a piece of waste. And then spending, the thing that always gets me, I'm a comfort eater. Like when I get stressed, I comfort eat. And it's especially like when I have to come up here to the church. The thing that gets me in trouble is like driving by Bojangles or whatnot. And so earlier, again, it's seasons. Earlier in quarantine, like when we weren't going out at all, like we weren't even coming up here, that was easy to not do. And so, but as we've had to come up here and like work on the film studio and film things, and we had an outdoor staff meeting today, like that temptation to run out and get something that I normally couldn't get at home is there. And so just like be more mindful about like how am I like frivolously throwing this away, because then what it leads to back home is like food waste.
Yes.
Because
yes.
we bought the groceries, and so just kind of focusing on that for this upcoming week. But we hope that you will consider ways that you can do no harm. You can engage in our challenge. It's the same as the adult challenge. It's just kind of structured a little bit differently. But you can find that on the events page at apexumc.churchcenter.com and signing up for that adult challenge. And you'll hear us kind of reference that throughout our focus of simplicity. But thank you guys for tuning in.
Thanks.